Hello, my name is Mary Lou Walker. I am the descendant of some original settlers on the portage at the carrying place, Murray. My four greats-grandparents were James Hendricks and his wife Phebe Pearson, who settled there in 1799. James died in 1812, not too long after they came up here. Phoebe lived to 1848, and she has a marker in the old Carrying Place Cemetery, which some people see and some people don't because it spends most of its time under the turf. But at one time it was upright, and I do have pictures of it upright and pictures of my grandmother standing beside it when it was upright. I want to talk about her marker at the old Carrying Place Cemetery because I see people who like stories about markers, and they are very curious about this one. They have no idea who the man was who put this marker up for her and why he did it. Okay, and I know the story, so I'm going to tell you. So James Hendricks and his wife Phoebe came up here from New Jersey in 1799 and settled on Lot 7. And James was a millwright, and he had a sawmill, and it was in operation up here for a few years. And in 1806, he wanted to have a foreman for the sawmill, so he didn't have to be there all the time. So he sent back down to New Jersey for somebody from his wife's family. His wife was a Pearson. Back in New Jersey, the Hendrickses and the Pearsons were next door neighbors since the mid-1600s. So he sent down for the oldest of the Pearson children to come up and be the foreman for his sawmill. So he went up there in 1806. Okay, so this is not my family, so I'll have to read these names. Okay, but the person who came up was James Pearson, and he was the oldest of 7 children, all from New Jersey. They were the children of Nancy Ross, was her maiden name, Pearson, and Joseph Pearson of New Jersey. So James came up here and he did his foreman thing. Okay, his father, Joseph Pearson, died in 1808. And so his mother was left a widow. Nancy Ross Pearson was left a widow, and so young James, the oldest of her sons, came back down to New Jersey and got his mother and his 6 siblings and brought them up to Canada. And so he continued to work for what was his uncle, James Hendricks, and his aunt, who was James's wife, Phoebe. Okay, her name was Phoebe Drake Pearson, and she married a Hendricks. Okay, so James Pearson's father, Joseph Pearson, was Phoebe Pearson's brother. Okay. Joseph Pearson, who was James Pearson's father, was Phoebe Pearson's brother. So Phoebe was young James Pearson's aunt, and James was his uncle. So anyway, when Joseph died, James came down and he got all his siblings and he brought them up to Canada, and they, his mother, who was now a widow, married James Hennessy, who was a widow. And James Hennessy his first wife was named Christine Simmons, and they had 5 children. He was left with these 5 children, and she came up there with 6 children who were young, and they had a blended family. And they kept a public house on Concession 1, Lot 64 in Ameliasburg. It's out almost to Hennessy Point. Okay, the public house was not actually on the point. It's a couple lots short of that. But they ran a public house, and I guess they had a lot of help because there were so many children. I think I will not talk to you probably more about the Pearsons. I could, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to say, so Colonel James Pearson, okay, the young man who came up to be his uncle's foreman, he became a colonel not from the Revolutionary War in the States, but from the War of 1812. Okay, that's what it says, Colonel James Pearson. So he is the one who had the stone laid for his Aunt Phoebe in the cemetery, okay? He was not her second husband. He was not her lover. He was not anything else that people have made up. He was her nephew. And when he first came up to run the sawmill, they took him in, and, fed him and stuff like that until he was out on his own. And he actually did get property. He got, he started out at Sugar Point with 800 acres, and the title to the land was not clear, so he had to leave there. And he relocated to Pleasant Bay and took his brothers, Aaron and Joseph Jr., came and settled there with him. Another of the brothers, David, went with his mother and her new husband out by Hennessy Point and settled there with them. And now the girls married in the area. There was one in Kingston, one in Hillier, and I'm not sure what happened to the other Pearson girl. But so he had this put up for her in 1848. She had been a widow for a very long time. I don't know why one of her children did not put this up. The oldest son, Jacob, was still living in 1848. The second son was still living in 1848. In fact, all of them except one of the sons was gone. All the rest of the children were still living, but they didn't put up stone for her. This James Pearson did it. And he put on the bottom of it, there's a little verse on the bottom, and you'd have to go to the cemetery and use your Swiss Army knife and cut the sod out, way out and around, and then you can see the verse. But it says farewell up at the top with some crossed hands. In memory of Phoebe, wife of James Hendricks, died April 2nd, 1848, in the 86th year of her age. This stone was erected by Colonel James Pearson for her kindness to him when a stranger in Canada. And we always thought that he really was like he was a stranger to the family also. Like, why would he say that? Why wouldn't he say he was her nephew or something? He chose not to for whatever reason. And how I know all of this stuff and more about Pearsons and how they came to Canada and everything is, so when Colonel James Pearson's brother, David, was 95 years old, he was interviewed in a newspaper. And it's a long, like 2 columns of interview. And he tells the whole family history. And he tells about his older brother coming up here and being the foreman, and what happened to all the other children, and the exact route by which, when James came and got his mother and all the children, and they choose to move up in the winter time so they can go by sleigh and over the ice and everything. He gives the exact route that they take and up to get to Upper Canada. It is jam-packed full of information. If anybody's interested in it, the two columns of the newspaper are in my binder about Hendricks family, and it's available on the shelves of Magrick in Ameliasburg and the shelves of OGS Quinty Branch in Trenton. Okay, and you have to go to the back. It's arranged with text story about the family in the front, and the second half of the binder is all pictures and various other things that aren't text. But you can go and read the columns if you want. There's a lot more in there. Okay?